Hey everybody, Michael Thiessen here for Liberty Coalition Canada. I'm here with my good friend Randy Hillier. Randy, it's great to have you on our podcast again. How are you doing after this long week that we've been working?
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be on the podcast with you, Michael. Great to see you again. And after a wonderful, exciting, and exhilarating week in the last week, culminating with two events: the meeting with the political leaders here in Lanark after a great rally, march on the bridge, and march to the Supreme Court on Canada Day on July 1st in Ottawa. So it was uh, a great number of great initiatives happening, and look forward to continue with them.
Yeah, our End the Lockdowns Caucus was very busy in the last 8 days. I was out in Calgary with Derek Sloan, and you and Maxime were in Niagara. And then, as you just mentioned, we went to Canada Day, and then we went to a meeting right after it. The most impactful thing about the Canada Day event for me, I have two, I think, that are going to be lifelong memories. The meeting on the bridge was a very beautiful moment where we saw members from Quebec who are against lockdowns as we are, and wanting to celebrate Canada Day. And when we all came together, us coming from the Ontario side and then coming from the Quebec side, and they started yelling "Liberté, Liberté," and we started yelling "Freedom, Freedom." Uh, it was a it was emotional. Actually, I've had many people tell me that that was an emotional moment, and then for us to turn around and then march together was quite amazing.
Yeah, I think that's what we're showing with the Liberty Coalition, with no more lockdowns, with these activities are, um, Canadians are united. Many Canadians are united, even though our governments are always seeking ways to exploit differences between people. There is a common foundation and understanding for a great many Canadians in 154 years of being recognized as a sovereign nation. We do have those powerful foundational characteristics and attributes of faith, of freedom, of responsibility. And that moment on the bridge when all sides came together, I can understand why so many people felt that emotional attachment, because it is symbolic and indicative of the creation of Canada. Um, People from different cultures, different languages, different religions coming together and forming unity, and 154 years ago, a new country.
The other part of the event that would be most memorable for me in a positive way was when the Snowbirds did a number of flyovers in the middle of me sharing about my grandfather, Oliver Baker, and him fighting in the Second World War, and me sharing about my father serving during the Cold War, and the snowbirds flying over at that moment. I remember going over to you and saying, "Hey, like, did you arrange that?" Because the timing was absolutely perfect. So I don't know if you figured out exactly who arranged that yet, but we are thankful to the snowbirds for their presence, and that will forever be a memory for me when they came over. What would be a second positive memory for you?
Well, I think that was a powerful, and you would think it was orchestrated and choreographed. It was so the timing was so exceptional. I think just overall the bridge, the snowbirds, and people sharing their stories like you did, like I did, like so many others did, about um, why is it, a reflection of our own families' histories, our and everybody's history of what brought so many good people together to create such a great country, and that's been under attack um, for a long time. But really under attack lately, where our governments, our politicians, our media are attempting to shame us of our past, shame us uh, of being Canadians. Some of the language that we're hearing these days is just, um, I never thought possible that we would have public institutions in the media um, shaming Canadians and encouraging them to rip down statues of Queen Victoria and Sir John A. and so many other figures who did so much to help bring people together, are now being torn apart. So I think that was people having the strength and the courage and the freedom to stand there and say, yes, I am Canadian, and yes, I am proud of being Canadian, and I'm going to continue to be proud to be Canadian.
Yeah, it seems like there are two things happening at the same time in our country. It seems quite obvious that you have this constant reminder of anyone's sin, not labeled as sin, but just any I would say Western historical figure being torn down for any of their missteps. And then you have this great ideology or idolizing of any minority group, to the point of this great imbalance. And of course, I think you and I would agree that that is somewhat reflective of a Marxist position of, we have to identify all of those people who have been oppressed, and they must now overthrow the perceived oppressor. And whether people are believing that or not, the reality of it is that's what's being pushed as an ideology in our country. And I've heard you say this, Randy. You know that I believe it as well, but I overheard you saying this just in a comment. That's not going to bring unity. And if there have been past transgressions, those things can be forgiven. And we need to move forward with a more honest dialogue, that if there's a grievance, then it can be forgiven, it can be recognized, and yet we still need to be able to move forward together. And this constant dialogue from every vantage point other than the silent majority is just really going to harm our nation. It's going to cause us more division, and it's also going to just trump up our differences, not even grievances, but it's just going to elevate our differences, when in reality, if we come together morally, if we come together responsibly, we can come together, every tribe, tongue, and language and nation. And I'm certainly hopeful that people will wake up and see how this popular socialist Marxist critical theory can be disposed of. So, but you know what? Our day didn't go 100% well. There was a few moments of frustration, both from you and me. So why don't we talk about that? Because I think people might be wondering about that. So do you want to describe the only part of the day that didn't go well? It happened kind of right in the middle of the rally. It only happened for a few minutes, and then it basically came and went like a storm.
Yeah, it was an unfortunate big. For people who were there, would have seen some of this or seen it all, but may not clearly understand what happened. And I think it is important to be clear and indicate. So, as you know, Liberty Coalition, No More Lockdowns were two of the key sponsors. There's one other sponsor who put in all the effort and all the legwork to make Canada Day happen, or this rally happen. We liaised with the police. We got the Portage Bridge closed. We had the sound system set up. We had people identified as security and to help people get to the right places at the right time. And all that was, and we also had a list of speakers. And we had a specific theme that we wanted and message that we wanted to deliver this Canada Day. And as probably everybody will know, or if they don't, at every rally that we have tens and dozens and even hundreds of people who want to speak at every event. But that can't happen. But more importantly as well, our coalitions, our groups are advancing a specific overarching message, and that is to unite people who oppose lockdowns in a peaceful, nonviolent, respectful, and professional manner, and to unify political opposition into a credible and potentially successful political home for people. So we don't invite people who have contrary messages. We don't invite people who are aggressive or espouse violence, or who are have less than credible reputations, or whose message may seek to be contrary to what we're trying to do. One of those fellas goes by the name of Chris Guy. His real name, of course, is Chris Socaccia. He doesn't use his real name, but there's others like that. And they have a very different message than we do. And I would say it's the presence of people like this that have prevented an effective coalition to oppose lockdowns from happening in Canada. We want to appeal to broad-based, middle-class Canadians who, again, in a respectful, professional, and considerate fashion. Chris Guy intentionally tried to hijack our event, prevented the choir from singing, prevented a great many people who were lined up to speak from speaking, and in a brazen act of self-promotion and hysterical promotion. So that was an unfortunate, and I think for all people who oppose lockdowns and the unwarranted and unconstitutional measures that are happening in this country, we need to all realize, if we want to be successful, we have to keep the radical, extreme, violent, and unreputable people out of our image if we want to be successful.
So, Randy, let me be Pastor Mike here for a minute. I don't know enough about Chris to talk about his reputation, but here's what I do know. I have Chris Guy's phone number on my phone. I reached out to him really early on as he was being outspoken, and I've spoken to him a number of times just to ask what he's all about. And I didn't receive a phone call. Did you receive a phone call from Chris asking us to be a part of the event?
No, nobody received a phone call.
No, I didn't receive any request. In fact, when they showed up, and it was obvious that he was trying to get the center stage, I went over and again peaceably said, "Hey, look, this is our event. If you have an event that you've planned for later on, if you'd like to come on at the very end just to share about your event, go ahead." But the thing that offended me the most was that he actually referenced Jesus. And I hate it when people do this. I hate it when people try to guilt Christians into doing something wrong, and they just, I think those Christians are a bunch of idiots. If I just name drop Jesus would do this, then they're going to throw their brains out the door. And so I've been really wrestling with the fact of calling Chris up and saying, you were not only absolutely disrespectful, you proved yourself to be completely ignorant, completely rude, completely self-promoting, and blasphemous. And yet you accuse us of restricting your freedom of speech. There was none of that. Chris didn't ask to be a part of the day. He started sending out his own promotional material, and then he started just basically physically trying to take over our stage. And I have to say, as a peaceable man, like I've not gotten into a fist fight in my life. As a peaceable man, that was really stressful. It was really disheartening, especially to go up and say to someone, hey, you know what? We might be different, but you're a co-belligerent, but let's try to be respectful to one another, and you respect what we're doing here, and we'll respect what you're doing later. And there was none of that. And he just showed himself to be a very immature man. And then he ran off the stage. I don't know about that. But he ran off the stage like a little kid running away from the police, because I guess he wasn't even supposed to be there legally. So, yeah, folks, if you want to be a part of a good, moral, respectful movement, everyone has to do their part. There were organizations, Randy, that we said no to, that are really reputable organizations, that are really stand-up organizations. Vaccine Choice Canada asked to speak at the rally, and we didn't have enough time, and we had to say no to Vaccine Choice Canada. And they're one of the leading groups that had that lawsuit with Rocco. They're one of those leading groups that continue to do their research. We had to say no to a number of groups. And so, Chris, if you're listening to this, and you want to talk about this is not about a freedom of speech. You feel free to give me a call on my cell phone and be a man, and don't be don't be a bully. And we'll talk about the way forward. But folks, don't fall in line with anybody who's just speaking words and they're not following up with respectful, moral actions, because there's a lot of self-promoting going on, and we don't like that. It was really disheartening. It was the most stressful thing of the entire event.
Yeah, that's right. But people should realize, like, when I started speaking out last April and becoming increasingly vocal into May of 2020 about these lockdowns and the state of emergency, I met and talked with many people who were starting to get vocal as well, and being vocal. So I met people like Chris Guy, and I met people from many different groups. And it was through those discussions and meeting that I realized not everybody who was opposing lockdowns were doing it for the intended objective. I saw and found many people who were promoting anarchy and promoting falsehoods of free men on the land and the sovereign citizen. And a lot of these groups, and even ones that were clearly more aligned with Antifa than with opposing lockdowns, were all trying to, I would say, trying to manipulate people and trying to ride on the coattails of good people to advance a very different agenda. And that's why opposing lockdowns in Ontario took a long time to coalesce it into an effective opposition. And that's really why I started No More Lockdowns, because there was just too many other groups who were advancing, well, what I would call un-Canadian values and reprehensible actions. And of course, that's when you and I and the Liberty Coalition and others, and the development of the Police on Guard for Thee, the Professionals Against Lockdown, the End the Lockdown Caucus. Those were all the results of good people, respectful people getting together and putting forth a message that Canadians could get behind. So, we need to be, there's a saying about to be ever vigilant about our freedoms. We should also be ever vigilant of the wolf in sheep's clothing as well. There are many groups that oppose government for many different ways or many different purposes. Let's keep ending the lockdowns is the singular greatest priority for a great many people in Canada, and let's not get sidetracked with these other, well, I would call them fraudulent groups that look like one thing but act entirely different.
Yeah, and my heart is always for people to repent and for people to apologize and for people to come together uh, in a moral way. You and I are right in the same heartbeat, Randy, when we talk about we want to return to constitutional law. Our forefathers thought very long and hard. Maybe not long and hard enough about the notwithstanding clauses and the our rights could be sidelined, without that much evidence being provided. But other than that, they sure thought long and hard about our fundamental freedoms. And they thought long and hard about also how we would work together as a nation. So, folks, we are working together. I want to end. I want to say we, and No More Lockdowns and Liberty Coalition Canada and some of these other liberty groups that are like a Vaccine Choice Canada that are very concerned about what's going on. We are working hard to return to a moral foundation for the rule of law, not for anarchy. So I want to end on a positive note, Randy. One more part of the day that meant so much to me was when we were up on the steps and people started pouring in from the bridge, and they just kept coming. Now, it just represented so many people who want to see our country return to the rule of law and for liberty. But it just encouraged my heart to see so many people there.
Oh, absolutely! That was an emotional moment to see the thousands of people walking together, coming together at the Supreme Court, and I think this is what I would say is through that whole day, nobody was looking at one another and looking for what made us different from one another. That what could we say is different about you than me? Everybody was there looking at we are united. We see the goodwill and the good faith and the compassion within everybody, young and old, male and female, various ethnicities, and like that's truly, I think it was representative of the Canada and the Canada Day celebrations that I used to attend many decades ago as a youngster. People not seeking out differences, but seeking unity and seeking that goodwill. Love thy neighbor, not rat on thy neighbor. So it was a powerful day, and I want to thank you, Liberty Coalition, Mark Friesen, and everybody who took part. And together we'll continue to advance the cause of faith, freedom, responsibility in our country.
It's great. Well, so everybody, this is going to be a short one this week because Randy and I are tired, and I'm going to take a bunch of days off. So, Randy, I want to thank you too. And we had, again, I'm just so proud of all of you politicians, you and Max and Derek and Rod, and we've got all of our other politicians like Steve and Daryl, and I think of our End the Lockdowns Caucus, and I've just been so proud of what you guys have been doing, and I'm thankful for you. So everybody, have a great rest of the summer, or this beautiful summer week, and I'll talk to you next week. Signing off.